excited to chat with you. So why don't we kick it off? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I am the Chief Operating Officer of the NBA G League. It's a new role that the NBA G League started this year, or actually last year upon my arrival. And it essentially covers all of the general management and day-to-day operations of managing the league. And it also includes functional areas like marketing, digital products, information technology. There's financial P&L responsibilities associated with the management of the league as well that I oversee. So it's a pretty fulsome role, and it feels like it continues to grow by the day.
That's amazing. And if I may, you got the G League is in a bubble in Orlando, right?
Yes. We had canceled our season last year, mid-season. We had gotten maybe 2/3 of the way through, and then the pandemic hit us, and we needed to cancel our season for health and safety reasons. And then the NBA launched, a bubble on the Disney campus in Orlando this summer and into the fall. And the NBA G League is doing the same thing, kind of rinse and repeat, down on the Disney campus as well. And we'll kick off with our first game next week on the 10th of February. So really excited to get that going.
That's amazing. And how long will your season run? It starts on February 10th. How long will you go through?
So our championship game will be on March 11th.
Okay. Just want to make sure that everybody's jotting down those dates.
Absolutely. It's a shorter season, but the same excitement, probably even more so this year, because we've got a couple of surprises that people haven't seen. So it's exciting.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, we'll be cheering you on. So let's take a step back a little bit to how did you start your career off in media?
Yeah. So I went to graduate school and then to business school in particular because I wanted to kind of change the focus of my career. Prior to business school, I was in technology consulting. I was a software developer. I worked for a small software house, a startup at the time. And I decided to go back to business school because I had this curiosity and interest in the media and entertainment industry, and couldn't figure out how to make that change and how to make that transition. So I thought business school would enable me to do that. When I finished business school, I took a role with a management consultancy, Booz Allen, and I worked in their communications, media, and technology practice here in New York. And I had an opportunity to consult with and to advise a number of large international or global media companies, sort of helping them solve all kinds of business problems, anything from, what's happening with peer-to-peer digital technology, which was sort of a nod to my background, to how do we program content in a short form, bite-sized way that gets the attention of youth audiences and others that have so many other options today.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that you used the word curiosity, because that's something that we've talked about just in terms of during this pandemic, just staying curious, right? And just learning more and more about things. So how did you transition into sports?
So it took a while, actually. I am a former college athlete. I played basketball in college. I also coached youth basketball teams. I have two daughters, and I coached their girls basketball teams, and I coached girls basketball, youth basketball even prior to having my daughter. So sport and basketball in particular has always been a pretty important part of my life. But I still couldn't figure out how to connect that part of my life with my work life. So about a decade and a bit after leaving Booz Allen, I landed a role and an opportunity at NBC Sports Group. Now, NBC Sports Group doesn't have a ton of basketball on its channels. It has Telemundo, it has the Golf Channel, it has NBCSN, which is actually going to be shuttering its doors soon. Mm-hmm. But it had all kinds of other content and very little basketball. I think it had the Atlantic 10 Conference. And of course, it had the Olympics. And so USA Basketball was a part of that. So I still hadn't figured out how to connect the dots entirely, but at least I was in the sports industry. But it took a while to kind of make that transition.
Yeah. And what did you do at NBC?
So at NBC Sports Group, I ran their direct-to-consumer business, which we probably now know as Peacock TV.
Yes.
Yeah. So before Peacock TV launched, NBC Sports Group birthed, if you will, the direct-to-consumer business at NBCU. And that business was centered on a product called NBC Sports Gold, which was a portfolio of subscription-based products made available to sports fans across 17 or 18 different sports. So we had a product available if you were interested in Premier League soccer, or if you were interested in global rugby, or if you were interested in track and field, or if you were interested in NASCAR. So it was a portfolio of products across NBC Sports portfolio of content. We had a golf product, for example, because NBC Sports Group manages the Golf Channel. And so that was NBCU's foray into direct-to-consumer. Now, that's since been merged and transported and integrated into this thing that we now call Peacock Television. And sports is a central part of that, but they also have entertainment and other genres. So my role at NBC Sports Group was to launch the direct-to-consumer business and then to manage the direct-to-consumer portfolio of subscription-based products.
Got it. And now, how has that experience, coupled with everything else that you've done, how did that help you get to your current position at the NBA G League?
So I think it has a lot to do with my background, not just at NBC Sports Group, but I think that was helpful because I think sports leagues like to have people that have sports backgrounds and experience in sports. But I think it was really the kind of track record and body of work at NBC Sports Group running the direct-to-consumer businesses. But I also had a really long history, I guess you can say, and track record of managing digital businesses, of growing audiences, of managing a P&L, of building partnerships and monetizing assets within an organization. So, and then digital experiences. So I think it was kind of a combination of those things, many of which were embedded into my role at NBC Sports Group, but I'm not certain it was NBC Sports Group alone. I think it was more a kind of a amalgamation of a number of things I had done throughout my career.
Yeah, that's great. So, building on your experience of growing audiences, when you think about the growth of the NBA G League, how do you think about growing the league to the next level? And what are your not your insights, but what's the thought process there to continue to grow the league?
Yeah, so I think we have to do a few things, and what we're focused on is one, being able to attract and nurture audiences. And I think one of the key ways we'll be able to do that is through storytelling. So we're investing and placing a lot of emphasis and focus on storytelling, about the league, about the players, about the richness of who the players are, their lives, their background, their experiences, their interests, their stories off the court. So on the court is always going to be there. It's important. And the athletes in the G League are amazing. They're very, very talented. I think it's a very well kept secret, the caliber of play and the talent level in the G League. We hope to tell stories to help people get to know that better. And in doing so, attract and nurture and engage audiences and grow a community, really, that enables us to build a direct relationship with those communities, with those audiences, and with those fans. So we're focused there. We're also focused on expansion. We recognize that there are youth audiences that we've got to do a better job of talking to, communicating with, building relationships with. We also recognize that there are communities and audiences outside of the U.S. that we need to reach and communicate to and attract and engage and nurture. We have expanded the G League. You may have read the announcement about our new team in Mexico City, and then we've also launched a new team this year, Team Ignite, which is a team with, at its core, young high school graduates who are not yet eligible for the NBA draft because they're not 19, who don't necessarily want to go to college for a one and done kind of experience. They want to start their professional careers now, much like you see in professional soccer in Europe, much like you see in tennis, much like you see in golf. There's a pathway for young people to get started early in their careers, provided they have the talent to do so. And so we've launched this new team, which we think will enable us to, help these young men develop and provide a pathway to them to pursue their dreams of making it to the NBA, but also to attract and engage younger audiences who are, in many cases, already attached to and fans of many of these young men who we now have as part of Team Ignite. And then I think the third area is we are actually more mission driven than I think I understood before joining the league. And I hadn't, when I think of a mission driven organization, I really do think about sort of not-for-profits or, maybe like Sesame Workshop or something. But I don't tend to think about sports leagues. But I have to say, the NBA G League is really mission driven. I mean, at our core, at our root, is this ethos around development. And I think helping these young players on Team Ignite develop and grow, helping players across our league develop and grow and achieve their dreams, helping women who want to break into sports refereeing, for example. We enable them an opportunity to do that. We had a game last year where all three referees on the court were women. It's the first time that had been done in a professional league. Of course, we're seeing more and more of that happening across various leagues this year in particular. But the G League, in its mission to develop, was one of the first to do something like that. We develop coaches. There's several coaches at the NBA G League who have ascended to the NBA. There's several front office personnel who have ascended to the NBA. There are league staff who've ascended to other teams in different positions. And that's really at our core. And so we think paying attention to that mission and driving that will actually fuel our growth as well.
I love that. I love it. That's awesome. That's congratulations.
Thank you.
So based on all of your would share with our audience today?
That's a really tough question. So I thought about this, and I don't think I have something kind of short and sort of snappy to say. So I'll try to explain it. The one area that I think about, and as I've kind of advanced in my career, I think a lot about leadership. And in doing that, I have some challenges and some struggles that I would like to share by way of a career insight to the listeners. As you kind of start your week or start your day or whatever period of time that you set aside for planning, I guess the first piece of advice and insight in that is find time to do that. But whatever time that you do set aside for that, think about the tools of delegation and partnership. So I spend a lot of time sort of organizing, I have lists of things that I need to get done, that I need to accomplish. I'm sure many of the listeners do the same thing. And that's great to have that to-do list, and I'm sure it can get overwhelming. But spend as much time on compiling that list to be thorough on how can I be as effective as possible getting those things done. And for me, that's meant understanding that I don't have to be the one to do it all. That I can use the tools of delegation and of partnership to do more and to be more effective and to free up my time and mind space to prioritize things that are going to directly impact the business drivers and the goals that we're trying to achieve as an organization. So delegation is a wonderful thing. And I think sometimes as a woman of color, we or I go into situations and I take it on, that's what I do. I take it on and I get things done. And people recognize that and that's worked well. But I think what in leadership, sometimes what got you here isn't going to get you there. And that's one of the things that I have to try to focus on. So the insight there is find some time to plan if you're not doing that already. And then just spend some time thinking about delegation and partnership in service of those plans and tasks that you hopefully clearly outlined. It doesn't all have to be done by you alone. Those are useful tools.
Yeah.
And then I think the second kind of career insight, if you will, is captured in a quote of sorts. And the quote is unknown. The author is unknown to me. I wish I could give her or him credit. But effectively it says, the same boiling water that hardens an egg softens a potato. And the lesson in that is that, so it's not really about the circumstances. It's about you and what you're made of. And I think that that's a really interesting insight that I've sort of taken on, because particularly in this environment, there is a lot going on, a lot of circumstances, a lot of atmospheric and environmental things going on. But it's really about you and what you're made of, because that same pot of hot boiling water that you may find yourself in can harden an egg and it can soften a potato. So it's really about who you are and what you're made of, and less about, the circumstances and the context is important, but that doesn't have to be the thing that defines it. You can be the thing that defines it. So I think that's just a really powerful thing to try to remind myself of, particularly in these unprecedented times.
Right.
Where boiling water, doesn't necessarily seem like a particularly good thing, but it could be.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. And then the final thing I would say is, if leaders who do not listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And I pride myself in being a good listener, but at the same time, I have this drive to do and to be the person doing it and to achieve results and all of those things that I think many women and women of color kind of carry on their shoulders. And sometimes I can forget to just be quiet. My mother used to say, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That means you should listen twice as much as you should talk. So it's a variation of that theme. And I think, again, in a leadership position, what you can sometimes find is that you will surround yourself with people who no longer have anything to say if you're not listening.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So we have a question from our audience who's asking, do you believe that work-life balance really exists? And the question is from Brooklyn Night Media.
Mm-hmm. I think it exists, but not all at the same time, if that makes sense. I mean, I think you can have a balance, but I think there'll be times when the seesaw will be leaning to one side. And then so the work now then is to recalibrate. And then you can get there, but you may not be able to stay. And then it may lean to one side. So then the work is to kind of tip it back to the center. So I think it does exist, but.
Oh, did we lose you, Portia?
Oh, you got me back?
There you are. Okay.
Yeah, I saw my wheels spinning too. It might be my internet connection. Apologies for that.
Yeah, no worries.
So I think it does exist, but I think the idea that it can and does exist all at the same time is not realistic.
Yeah. Okay. And everyone loved the harden of eggs, softening potatoes. Catherine says, I've been working on softening potatoes of late. So that really resonated. And bonus question today before we let you go is, if you were to write a book, what would be the topic?
That's another good question. So I actually think it would be about like sisterhood or something around women connecting with women and the experience of that, the power of that, the joy in that. I think is something that I would want to write about.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Portia, good luck as you kick off the season next week. We'll be watching, and then we'll see everyone here next Tuesday for our next lunchtime conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.